world flooded with educational opinions, trends, and quick fixes, there's often a disconnect between what feels good in the classroom and what rigorous research shows actually works for student learning. And that's where today's guest comes in. Stuart Kime isn't just a classroom veteran. He's a doctorate specialising in educational evaluation and has a passion for bridging the gap between research and practice. He's co-founder of the powerhouse organisation Evidence-Based Education, led policy for the UK government, and even advises universities around the globe. But get this, Stuart isn't about dry theory. He's obsessed with creating practical solutions for real teachers. And if you've ever wondered, does this strategy really improve reading, or how can I make professional development actually stick? Stuart's your guy. Today, we're diving into the evidence-based approach, what works, what doesn't, and how it can supercharge your classroom. Now, today's episode is brought to you by Smart Technologies, a world leader in education technologies. Smart is dedicated to empowering teachers and engaging students with innovative solutions that transform classrooms and inspire learning. From interactive displays to collaborative software, Smart provides the tools educators need to create dynamic and effective learning environments. With Smart, the possibilities are endless, and you can learn more at smarttech.com. Now, before we get into this episode, I just want to point out to you that the sound quality is below the standards that I set myself. And that's because I actually saved over the original file that has the Shure microphone recordings, and it was a complete lapse on my end, and I've got no way of recovering the files. And it's pretty much a hard lesson I've had to learn here. So I've done my best with the in-camera audio, and I can only apologize. On to the episode.
Stuart, welcome to the International Classroom.
Thank you very much for having me.
You find yourself here in Dubai. What brings you to our now sunny part of the world?
I'm here for a conference, a research-ed conference this Saturday, and I'm really excited for it because I've been to quite a few research-eds and similar events around the world, but I've never been to one here in Dubai, so that's why I'm here.
First impressions?
First impressions, well, I've been to Dubai before, but quite a long time ago actually, and I've noticed either I didn't notice things that appeared on the skyline beforehand, or there are lots of new things in the last 8 years since I've been here. But really happy to be back and visiting a few schools whilst I'm here. So it's really
fantastic. Well, we are thrilled to have you here.
Thanks.
And you're speaking on Saturday at the Research Ed Conference, which is going to be, I think, unfortunately, I'm not going to be there as we discussed, other things, other good things going on. It's just the nature of conferences and being in education as well. But take us through your educational journey. How did you end up where you are today?
Okay, how long have you got? Short version. So I was a classroom teacher, middle leader, and then senior leader, and that is a part of my career that spanned probably 11 years-ish, something like that. And taught secondary school English and English literature, and a bit of drama, and a bit of classics, because that's what happens with timetables, right? And then I left the classroom, and I went back to university to study for a PhD. And I studied with Rob Coe and Steve Higgins at Durham University. I like to think of that as having my brain put through a mangle, and then just squeezed, and it completely changed the way that I think about teaching. So I learned how to be a researcher, worked for Durham University for a bit, worked for the University of Tübingen in Germany for a bit, became a visiting professor at the University of Tübingen, worked for the UK government as a policy fellow, and then started my own organisation in 2015, Evidence-Based Education. So I've been, somebody once referred to me as a boundary dweller, which I thought was slightly impolite, but I'll take it.
What do they mean by that?
Right, so it's the kind of sitting between classrooms and classroom practice and research and policy and leadership and theory and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's probably a polite term for being indecisive.
Okay, I mean, the term I saw someone use on LinkedIn the other day, it was like, you're a parachutist.
Right.
In other words, like, was a teacher, left the classroom to move into, again, consultancy about design technology. And I was like, you literally just parachute into schools and then walk away.
Yeah, and I would not describe myself as that. And in fact, quite the antithesis of that. In the work that I do and my organisation does, if people work with me or with us, then it's for the long term. I'm very, very much. I'm really not a fan of the parachutist approach. But if I were to use that as an analogy for my own career, it's probably that I pulled the first parachute and then I'm now on about emergency chute number 11. Just keep trying something else.
So obviously, evidence-based education. I like the fact you also got a pin on, by the way.
Yep. I've got one for you. Would you like?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
In fact, it's literally here in my pocket. So let's get that out of the way. There you go. Very good.
That is amazing. I'll cherish that. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much for that. By the way, if anyone else wants to come and give me gifts, I'm happy to take gifts.
Who
doesn't like gifts? So let's dive into this idea of evidence-based education. So, can you explain the core principles, what you're trying to do there with evidence-based education? And I think the real question is why it's significant today.
So we're a little bit different from what sometimes people perceive as evidence-based practice for a start. So oftentimes when people talk about evidence-based, what they're talking about is very specific programs, practices, or whatever, for which there's been maybe an evaluation or some research done. So, and it says, if you do this thing like this, in this way, then you'll get this kind of effect or whatever. And while we're really interested in that, what we're perhaps more interested in, and our kind of take on the whole evidence-informed stuff, is about teacher expertise. It's about using the best available research evidence about the things that really highly effective teachers know and do and believe, and then just helping any teacher be a little bit better than they already are by finding a way in for them, by guiding them through it, by helping them to get feedback on their own practice in line with that, with the best available evidence. So our kind of approach is really about simply helping teachers be a little bit better at the day job. Sometimes the whole notion of evidence-informed practice or research-informed, it can feel like a bit of an exclusive club and something that you can only join after you've done a master's or some other qualification, or you've read every weird paper written by whosoever and whatever. That's not true. Good evidence-informed practice can happen without ever reading an academic paper, and using tools like ours, like the Great Teaching Toolkit, is one way in which teachers can quickly start to engage in evidence-informed practice. And all that means that they're doing is they're focusing on things that we already know are likely to make a difference to student outcomes. And for me, I'm quite a lazy person, to be honest with you. I don't want to waste my time on things that I don't already know are likely to work. So everything that we do in this whole evidence-based approach is about best bets. It's about guiding people towards those things. And why it's relevant now, gosh, it's always been relevant. But I think perhaps more so now because we are in a period of huge change, societal changes in lots of different parts of the world, technological changes. Everybody's talking about AI. What are we going to do? What will teachers do with AI? AI is, I think, and maybe I'm completely naive in this way, but it's another tool that we need to make good choices about. You only make good choices about things if you've got good judgment. And good judgment is a part of expertise. If you've got good knowledge about the teaching craft, you've got good skill, and your practice to make good judgments, then you can use AI and whatever else comes along skillfully to achieve the ends that you have. But only if you've got a framework to work from, only if you've got a sound underpinning theory of what really great teachers do. And that's basically what drives the work that we do with teachers from New Zealand to the US, to Dubai, to China, around the world, and what I love about it, basically.
I'm just going to move this real quick.
Yep.
In that way. And just put it. There we go, just there on you.
Right.
Just check that on me. Yeah, it's still good.
Yep.
Just checking the sound. It's just Just check again.
Do you want me to, I can move in closer?
No. It picks it up absolutely fine.
Yeah.
Just making, my waves are really high and it's got small, so it's like, just move that a little bit. Be absolutely fine.
Okay.
Still look golden. And then from there, so yeah, you mentioned China.
Yeah.
You just come back from there as well, haven't you? How was that experience?
Wonderful. Really uplifting, actually, for a number of reasons. We work with a lot of teachers in China, both native Mandarin speaking teachers and then teachers from around the world who moved there. And because our stuff is available in Mandarin and in lots of other languages, including Welsh, if you're interested, then what we're seeing is people starting to come together around a shared language of great teaching, even though the language that they're using, Mandarin or English, is different. And I had just earlier this week actually some fantastic conversations with Chinese teachers who are really just taking the ideas and running with them. And what they're doing is what I hope all teachers do with it, which is not to approach our work or really anything else from the evidence-based or evidence-informed kind of movement, or if it is movement. They're not taking it seeking the answers from somewhere else. They're not saying we need to look at this because we're not good enough at what we're doing and we need to find the answers and just copy something. What they're doing very intelligently is to build their own kind of mental models of effective teaching, to build their theories, and then to start to test things out in the classroom for themselves. So it's a kind of selection and an adaptation to their own context, which is really the best of what we can do. You know, it's about that kind of professional judgment that says, okay, you know, something like retrieval practice, right? There's a lot of evidence that suggests that that's really, really great, but how do you make that work if you're teaching some novice English learners who have Mandarin as a first language in a bilingual school context? What's the flavour of it that works best there? And the only person who can answer that question is the teacher themselves. So I just loved it. I had such a great time working with them. I was in Shanghai and in Hangzhou. It was great, really inspiring.
That's amazing. And I think what you said there is sometimes one of the boundaries and blocks that we find with teachers in terms of how to get started, because they will read a piece of research or something that's in a book, and then go, right, okay, I'll follow that step by step, and then maybe they don't get the same results. And that's then kind of puts them off and go, well, that doesn't work, you know, and actually what you're saying is, it doesn't need to be like that, does it? It's about evidences for you in your classroom. So give us an example. You mentioned something earlier, and it's a great product that you have in terms of the Great Teacher Toolkit. See that around. I think hopefully a lot of people listening and watching will have come across this. But give us a flavour, just in case they haven't. What are the types of things that they can find in there that's going to support them in their teacher development?
Okay. Thanks for saying it's a great thing. I hope this is a bit of a life passion, probably, I guess, for me. So what you'll find in there is, number one, this common language of highly effective teaching. It's what we call the model for great teaching, and it's basically 17 we refer to them as elements. Things like teacher-student relationships that are based on warmth and trust and empathy and care, promoting learner motivation, high expectations, questioning, feedback, all of these things that we know are associated with highly effective teaching. But what we did was we read all the papers, summarised it, put it into a one-page document that then is accessible to anybody. So that's the first thing, is that inside the toolkit you find that. Next, you'll find tools. So loads of people have toolkits these days. I've noticed this is quite a thing, right? But one of the things that is often absent from those toolkits is tools. Now, I may be being a bit stupid here, but I kind of figure tools are quite an important thing in a toolkit. So inside ours, you get feedback tools. For most teachers, figuring out what is the highest leverage, most important thing that they can get better at is really hard. Like if I asked you today, what should you get better at to teach your classes better? What's the single thing?
Put me on the spot. I mean, just reflecting through it, it'd probably be like, you know what? I'd probably like a bit more adaptation to some of the lessons. So, you know, I've taught Year 8 today, I've taught Year 11s today, I've taught Year 7s today. It goes on numerous at once. I think, you know what? of all of those lessons, if I gave it one thing, it would probably, you know what, I've got a host of different students in there with different skill sets.
Yeah.
I want to be able to adapt the lesson, not necessarily for access, but from my side, I'm a big advocate of skills. So I'd like to have a range of different skills on offer or opportunities to develop those skills for my students.
Yeah. So that's what you think. If I ask the students in your classroom, what would they say?
They'd be like, oh, so existing too much.
Yeah. Good. That's good. Right.
Someone actually did say that once.
I'm very happy about that.
Yeah, they want to move classes.
But again, I don't know how many classes you taught today, this week, but you're busy, right? You're moving from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And as human beings, we are generally pretty bad at really knowing ourselves as ourselves, right? As how our students see us, how they experience us, right? When I've seen videos of myself, I can't believe I do this with my hands all the time. And sometimes I think, do I really say like that much? And it's only when you see yourself from the perspective of the learners that then you can start to open up a slightly different way of thinking about your own development. So inside the toolkit, feedback tools, student surveys that give you granular feedback on your teaching practice so that you can then get a different perspective. And it's not, what do you think of your teacher? It's nothing like that. This is all an evidence-informed approach with surveys designed by Rob Coe. And they'll say things like, they're all kind of statements like, my teacher makes us think hard about new topics, for instance, like, or my teacher helps us to feel a sense of autonomy and choice in what we're doing, or a whole range of different things. So you get some objective feedback from different classes, and different classes are different, right? We've all taught those classes where some of them, everything's flying, we're having a great, it's great relationships with us, and others, okay, I'm still the same person teaching the same subject, but just it's not working. So student survey feedback, video feedback. So a really simple way of getting granular feedback on your teaching practice, either from colleagues or just from yourself. And then once you figure it out from that, where do I go? Some nice processes to work with colleagues. We call them development cycles to help you figure out what's my goal. How am I going to get better at the goal, and how will I know, right? What's the evidence going to, what evidence will I get for that? So we've got a whole bunch of tools in there, courses, self-paced courses, a whole suite of resources. We got really sick of Twitter and everything else where you you look around and go, wow, there's just an awful lot of rubbish.
Yeah.
And teachers haven't got time. And the time that they do use, they should have some kind of guarantee that they're going to be led to something that is high quality and is relevant to things that really matter. So that's what we've done inside the toolkit. We're constantly adding to it, so there's fresh stuff going in week after week after week. All anchored back to that common language, that framework model for great teaching. We've also got tools in there for schools to get feedback on how teachers perceive the school environment and leadership practices. So basically, everything is anchored around this idea that if professional learning is it's very similar in many ways to students learning, right? So think about what great teachers do in great classrooms. They ask questions, they give feedback, they explain things clearly, they give opportunities for practice, more feedback, all that kind of stuff. That's exactly what the toolkit does, but for professional learning.
I'm thinking of it more like a tool wall. I love YouTube, and there's a guy I watch on there called Mr. Build It, and these people, they kit out now, they've got garages, conversions, and I don't have a tool belt or a toolbox, it's a tool wall.
I like it.
And it's literally just headboards of tools just going on. It's like, I'm planing.
Yeah.
That tool for planing.
Yeah.
Oh, what's that? I need a circular saw.
It's the right thing for the right job at the right time. The way that my colleague Jamie talks about this is he thinks of it as having a gym membership, right? And you go along to the gym, but you don't just go around and use every single piece of equipment every time, right? If you're trying to improve leg strength, then you'll use certain machines. If you're trying to improve cardiovascular, whatever. And so what we've done is basically created the sort of gym membership, but for getting better at teaching. And we will constantly add to the toolkit. And the one thing that people using it can always be sure of is that the decisions about what goes in there have been made by people like Rob Coe, people like me, from the perspective of thinking, is there good evidence to say this is worth bothering with? But crucially, also, teachers, real people in real schools saying, actually this would be really helpful if we did it like this. That's the constant kind of evolution of it.
I like that, because what you're talking about there, and different to a lot of things, is about professional autonomy. And that, I think, sometimes is another block, but in terms of school leaders who will use evidence in some extent, and that limits professional autonomy and limits professional creativity. And I think that's the one thing, from my own experience in CPD and listening and speaking to a whole host of other teachers, is that when I go to my Monday meeting and I'm told what I'm going to be doing in CPD,
right,
and I'm not asked.
Yeah.
And so, in that sense, the toolkit that you've got, and it sounds like it's addressing a lot of professional autonomy.
Yep, absolutely.
And from my side, it's like I think sometimes the teachers will listen to this and go, "Oh, we just get told what to do."
Yeah.
And so they have this negative connotation towards evidence and evidence-based, because it's like, well, I don't get autonomy and I don't get creativity.
Yeah. And so I think the toolkit provides a happy place somewhere in the middle, right? So if a leader says, you've got access to the toolkit, pick something from in there, pick one area of it to get better at. Well, from a leader's perspective, they can feel confident that teacher is working on something worthwhile. For the teacher, they've got choice, they've got a degree of agency there, but there's still the expectation. You need to keep getting better. That's just part of the deal. And so, and leaders should always, I think, very reasonably have the expectation that teachers are, continuously trying to reflect on their practice and get better at the day job. But it's really hard to know which bits of the day job are really relevant for me. Right? There's no point trying to solve a problem that's not a problem. If I'm really great in the use of my feedback, if I know loads about feedback and I'm doing it really well, and then you tell me to go along and attend some training on feedback, when actually I've got a problem with classroom management, you're not addressing the problem that I have. But it's really hard to cater for all those different needs, but that's what the toolkit does. I've been talking just today actually to people about the idea of using the toolkit within a kind of accountability, performance management, appraisal context, whatever you call it. And I suggest there's three things. Like, number one, every teacher picks something from within the model for Great Teaching. So one of those 17 areas. So number one, if you do that, you already know that person's focused on some aspect of teaching that's worth bothering with. Number two, then ask that teacher, okay, you pick this area, what did you do? Not something spurious or kind of abstract, but literally, what did you do? Did you take a course? Did you get some feedback? Did you, what did you actually do? And then, what happened? What was the impact? What changed about your practice? What changed about students' learning? And crucially, what happened with students' learning? And if you can do that, then I feel like that's quite a fair performance monitoring, performance growth system where there's still that expectation you should do something, but the choice and the ownership is back with the individual teacher, which means that actually you can get on with solving your own problems as opposed to just some kind of generic idea of get better at stuff.
Yeah, because this concept of stuff, like in terms of coming in just from giving or told to.
Yeah.
If we just look at evidence and maybe sometimes I think leaders love or maybe overlove sometimes of this idea of evidence or research based.
Yeah.
Do you think it can run the risk of missing out the holistic part of teaching? And I say this because I had a conversation with an ex-Dyson engineer, and he said, how do we measure the metrics of problem solving? And it's quite interesting when thinking about the skill sets we have now, and just thinking of obviously in education, the leaders, and then want everything to be quantifiable. We want outcomes, you want to have measurements, we need to turn it into these things. Do you think actually by placing too much emphasis on that, we're at risk of missing out on the holistic part and focusing too much on the quantifiable part?
Yeah, it's an easy draw to look for those things that we can measure, but oftentimes either you can't measure them or the measurement tools that you're using deliver something that is so kind of woolly and vague that you lose all the information from it, and you end up with something that you have to you stick into a spreadsheet or something and make a nice chart, but actually it's fairly meaningless. I think that it's important to see teaching in its from the best available evidence in its fullest sense, in terms of human beings who know some stuff, do some stuff, believe some stuff, feel some stuff, experience some stuff, right? And there is really good evidence about things like the relationship between teachers' own motivation, their feelings of self-determination to become better at the profession to teach, the relationship between that and then job satisfaction, or a feeling of wanting to stay in the profession for longer, things like that. So if we think about human beings who are coming along and they're bringing with them, right, the energy, right? So you've spent years thinking about teaching, studying, preparing for teaching, getting qualified to teach, right? That's all yours. It's your knowledge, your skill, your energy, your enthusiasm. You're bringing that to work each and every day, and you're expending it, right? You're giving it, you're handing it over in the context of your classroom. And that's valuable. And if you're not then able to replenish, and if you don't feel that you're being replenished in some way or other, then eventually what we know is that stress, burnout, and what have you are some of the kind of eventual products of this. And I think with the use of research evidence, we need to kind of move away from a really spurious activity, which is about kind of labeling things and quantifying things and measuring and weighing and what have you, and use it to help us start conversations, better conversations about teaching and learning, to recognise that actually it can be something that helps to replenish, that helps teachers to feel that they're growing, that they're more in control of their own destiny, I guess, and have a greater degree of autonomy. But that's hard for leaders, right? Because leaders have their own impressions. Leaders have got people saying, well, but what about this? What's growing? What's shrinking? What's getting better? What's getting worse? And they need ways of capturing that, of describing that, because they themselves have those kind of impressions. So I think that we have to have a much bigger conversation that acknowledges that oftentimes we're trying to measure things that probably can't be measured, and certainly not very accurately. I remember a conversation with Dylan William talking about assessment data, and his line was we need to embrace the unreliability of a lot of the data that we have in schools. It's just not what we think it is, right? We try and give it a greater degree of accuracy and reliability than really it's ever going to have. Once we start to do that, kind of say, well, what really means something? What makes a difference? What makes a difference to kids' learning? Sometimes it's the feeling that their teacher knows them and is bothered by them. How do you capture that? How do you measure that? Do you go around going, does quality? Yeah. So what we need to do is open up the conversation about things that really matter, and then find ways of saying, well, what is it? What really constitutes growth in that area? And for me, it's about teacher expertise. It's about adaptive expertise. It's about what you were talking about earlier, about the ability to kind of flex within the context of the classroom, to the tweak that you make to the tone of voice that you use, the words that you use in an explanation. And so many of those things, we're never going to measure those, right? So let's not bother with that. Let's focus our attention on thinking about developing a bigger conversation about high quality teaching informed by good evidence. But let's never think that we're just going to suddenly get all of the answers through some data about it.
You mentioned AI earlier.
Yeah.
We would be remiss if we didn't have any conversations about technology, AI, and learning.
So David ends with a Y, so we have to, right?
Yeah. What's your take on it? Because there isn't any evidence yet, and obviously research has been done. We're talking a year ago. We're talking 18 months ago, aren't we? So I had this conversation with different people around the world, and by the time we finish this conversation, there'll be 3 new platforms out on someone's site. So it's a hard one to kind of describe. But from your side, what are the things that you're seeing? What's your take on that?
Yeah, there's a lot that I'm really excited about, really interested in, and I feel like I'm kind of playing on the sidelines with it, like new tools that come out and go, wow, I can do what? So there are certain things that I'm really excited about, and I think that we're starting to work now with some researchers in Germany looking at sensible, ethical uses of AI in the context of teaching development. So there's some interesting stuff there. But I think that, and I'm totally prepared to be proven wrong on this, and I'm sure I will be, but what I see, right, is that I think teaching will change. Because I think that it will become a lot easier to find, definitions of things, descriptions of things, videos of things, whatever it might be, so the kind of content knowledge stuff, all of that stuff that I have in my head about 20th century poetry and like iambic pentameter and quatrains or whatever. I mean, that's probably going to be much better served through different intelligent agents and what have you. But I think that the job of a teacher will be so much more about creating the environment, the relationships, helping students to navigate these things. So it will be much more of the human interaction that maybe only humans, I think, are going to be able to do. And I think that will be of huge value because so much of the kind of stuff that can be automated will be automated. But I don't think we're going to automate the look that you get and the non-verbal cues and the feeling that you get from when you have a really great teacher who knows their stuff, right? They know all about iambic pentameter and all that kind of stuff. But they know you. And I don't think we'll replace that. Maybe not, maybe one day. But so I think that teaching will change. I think that AI will it's definitely going to have an influence on it. But I'm quite hopeful for it being a tool to enhance the ways in which teachers are able to help other human beings to flourish, really.
Yeah, I mean, that's just one side. Everyone seems to be focusing very heavily on that and potentially taking that eye off other things that can have an impact in the future. Is there anything you've seen that isn't technology side, that isn't AI, that from research or evidence or just generally in education that you think actually in the future this is going to be something that's positive and impactful on students' learning and teachers' teaching?
Yeah, I mean, I'm probably quite old-fashioned in this, but what I see is that when teachers have the time and the support to really go into the depths of kind of reflecting on their own craft and then trying things out, so developing a more kind of laboratory-style approach to teaching, the knowledge, the skill, and the judgment that develops amongst those teachers is what's very important, right? That's teacher expertise, not a combination of knowledge and skill and judgment. I think that anybody who's focusing on that, particularly around this idea of adaptive expertise, and I think of adaptive expertise in contrast to routine expertise, right? Routine expertise is what you have and what you need just for repetitive tasks. So it's the same thing, same every day. But no classrooms like that, right? Children come in and everything's changed because somebody's had a fight, somebody's had an argument, somebody's got a cold, the wind, whatever, right? So adaptive expertise is this thing that people develop through loads and loads of practice over time, and it's what allows you to take the thing that comes out of left field and go and roll with it successfully. So to be honest, while you're probably looking for a kind of technological answer or something like that, the old-fashioned part of me says that what we're going to need is people with really incredible judgment. And that's a bit of a slower process, but if you're a teacher right now, investing time in knowledge of your craft, skill in your craft, and constantly flexing your kind of adaptive expertise muscles, that's going to count.
I'm smiling because it happened to me today. So, I teach year 7 moral and social studies. Now, what happens with the way it's split across, obviously, you have moral and we have then social studies. So, year 7s, 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s will get a moral education lesson and a social studies lesson. Yeah. So, my year 7s come in, so I'm unpacking the lesson. It's about how governments run, how governments work. It's great. Start explaining to it and go, so we did this in social studies. And I'm like, we're 5 minutes into a 55-minute lesson, what are we going to do?
Yep.
So, right, let's have a look at this. And then, have I made a mistake? No, it says, yeah, it's like, oh, geez, what am I going to do? And I literally went, right, okay, well, I go onto AI, I'm a massive advocate for it.
Yep.
I just go to the AI platform I'm using and go, right, I need something on this, year 7, moral education, and it needs to be active. I'm thinking, let's do a campaign trail. And like, you're going, and AI goes, that's a really good idea. I'm like, great, just write something for me and I'll give it to the students. A little bit more to it. And so basically, 5 minutes in, I'm just going, right on the board now. Right, guys, you are going to be a campaign manager. It's campaign year, America, UK, all going on, so it's relevant. You need to come up with a campaign. You've got to focus on one specific area, it's having an impact on your community. Everyone, all the kids, they go, flooding! I was like, okay, let's think something further around. And it's like, right, so then you've got to persuade people to vote for you. You've got to design, you need a logo. You can choose to make your own party, or you can pick one out globally. There's your task. Go use Canva, go collaborate. And the kids loved it. They got involved, and then you go around and start talking to them. Something like climate change. One of the kids went, "I'm going to do cyber security." Amazing.
Yeah.
Group of girls, we're doing feminism. And they're like, okay, this is really good. Why? So because the boys, they get a rota to play on the Astro at lunch and break time for football.
Right.
So we don't. We're not allowed on there.
Oh.
And it's like, we want to go on there. We want to play football. We want to be able to go on there. It's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And then another group of boys went, we're doing fascism. And I think any probably young teacher would go, no, you can't. And I'm like, well, hang on a minute. That's really good.
Right.
Because we need to talk about these things and have an understanding of these morally, because if we don't talk about them, if we choose to ignore them, then we're not learning about them.
Yeah.
So that for me is an adaptive part. 10 years ago, I would probably like, no, you can't do that.
Yeah. But the ideas for that, that you've got this 5 minutes in and a lesson change, right? So you use AI to give you the kind of the cues to go, right, you could go here. But then you make your choices, right? And it's those choices that require the judgment that says, is this going to fly with this group today, right? And then once they're off, now you've got children on fascism, feminism, and whatever else. Then your adaptive expert, you can't keep going back to AI and go, right, they've done this now, what do I do? Now it's on you. And I think that's the kind of interaction that I think is really interesting, where you're not outsourcing your thinking or the student's thinking to AI. You're kind of going, right, here's the situation, give me some kind of structure to work from, and then using your deep experience of classroom practice to go, right, I'm going to fit it like this.
Yeah, and I think those are the skills we want in educators, but that isn't something that just comes around on a night, is it? It's not something you can just take from a laptop. It takes experience.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, sometimes it's bad experiences.
Yeah.
Putting yourselves in situations where you kind of go, well, that didn't work.
Yes.
And having the support from a head of faculty, or even sometimes the students, to go, right, guys, we're going to trial this. We're going to trial it and see what happens. And some schools really have that, like this innovative approach.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, you've probably seen more than I have. You just hear stories that some don't. You're limited to and fixed on, right, it's this way or no way.
Yeah, and it's it's sad when the culture kind of doesn't allow that room for manoeuvre. And I'm a big believer that the environmental factors, the leadership factors, can either constrain or they can enable great teaching. Even the best teacher on their best day cannot be their best professional selves if they're working within an environment that is constraining them, and if it's disordered, if it's chaotic, if they're worried about things, if they haven't got the resources that they need to do it. When leaders help them in that way, to kind of clear away the things that get in the way and to build up the things that enable learning, like great collaboration amongst teachers, like professional learning. When you have those supportive relationships in schools, a real high degree of trust, then you get people truly flourishing. And then if there's that little bit of space to go, well, I wonder what would happen if I did it like this. And you're in a space of, it's disciplined innovation. It's not just kind of, see what happens and who cares. Yeah. Then great things can happen, because suddenly you realise, maybe if I use AI in this way and see what happens, I can tweak it. And, but it requires a culture of innovation. It requires safety, psychological safety. Yeah. But psychological safety that doesn't accept just anything and just a free for all and low standards. But it does allow you to have a go and see what happens, just as we would expect children to, have a go and see what happens.
So there's a phrase in there or a saying about, flowers don't fail to grow, in terms of in the wrong environment.
Yeah.
Exactly, and it's the whole, you put something in the right environment, right materials, and that's what you get. So it's a great one to have. I think people listen to that. There's a lot they can take away. Like, we talk a lot about trust. I was had the pleasure of talking to Craig Randall, trust-based observations. Most teachers out there have all been observed. Or are observing and are unhappy with the framework they have to do it in. It's all back to that quantifiable. Do they tick this box? Are you outstanding? And we need to move away from that. We need to use
most classroom observations, cannot service the need that they're purport to. Right? You can't derive some kind of measure of quality from going and looking at somebody's practice, right? And again, that's one of our interests, is to help teachers just to understand themselves a little bit not for the purpose of ranking or grading by somebody else, but simply to say, if I can see myself and understand myself as a teacher a little bit better, maybe there are things that I could do that were probably obvious to the kids who've been sitting in front of me for the last 3 months, but weren't obvious to me because I'm me and I'm here.
It's amazing. I found asking teachers, can I video your lesson? Like, obviously here, you can see I'm quite like the old camera gear.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no, I don't want to watch myself. I don't have to listen to my own voice. And it's that thing, I go back to my PGCE, and this was 2005, videotape. But you had to record a lesson. And I've said this over and over, from a sporting background, I had a heavy rugby background.
Yeah.
We would record every lesson.
Yeah.
Like, you record training sessions, you can get it to your iPad and go, look, this is what's happening.
Yeah.
And I kind of think if professional athletes, sports people with finest of margins are doing that and getting instant feedback on just tweak this, just do this, why as teachers, as educators, are we not recording?
Yeah.
For in-house, it doesn't have to go out onto YouTube, it doesn't have to be on what was Teachers TV. In-house recording, so you can benefit from seeing yourself. And like we said earlier, I didn't realise I say, okay, it's mine.
Yeah.
Okay, guys.
Yeah. Yeah, or you go around and you say, right, has everybody got that? Okay, great. And you think, what, really?
Yeah.
But if you ask the question, why don't teachers do this? So you could list off sports people, musicians, dancers, people, that play the guitar, that record it, how does that sound, right? All that kind of stuff. So what is it about teachers that for a lot, and it's not universal, has got them to this point where why is that? Why is it really common in sports, professional sports, to have video of yourself and to really analyse the minutiae of it, but not in teaching?
I think they're scared. I think from a teacher, I'm not obviously different from me, but I think a lot of them would be scared about the critique, worried about what would happen. And I think again it goes back to this idea of trust-based.
Yeah.
Psychological safety. Are you in a school where this is part of our professional learning, our professional growth, and it's not as in we're here to challenge what you do, we might question you, so why did you do that?
Yeah.
Why are you doing it that way? Okay, great. What do you think would happen if you did this?
Yeah.
And that, I think, goes back to this idea of, and one thing we also is coaching. Lots of schools use this word, we'll have coaching conversations. Okay, great. Who came in and trained you how to coach?
Yeah.
Well, no one. We were just told to go off and do it.
Yeah.
You've probably seen a few of those.
Yes. Yeah. No, indeed. But on that thing of like a video and professional growth and sports people doing things and dancers and musicians and what have you. Teachers work in this slightly weird way, and they're always doing the performance. Right? You play rugby, you play a match, and it's like once a week or something like that. Teachers are doing a performance 5 times a day, every day. And there's something kind of risky about seeing yourself in the performance when you know that the performance really matters. You're thinking, actually, I'm trying to do the best that I can for the children in my room. And I firmly believe that teachers, pretty much every teacher I've ever met is really just trying to do the best that they can. But they're doing it's live performance every day. But, you videotape practice in, or if you're playing the guitar, you record yourself and go, how's that going, or piano or whatever, so that the performance becomes, something that you have greater control over, you've got more insight into. Teachers just don't have the safe rehearsal space a lot of the time. It's always the live performance. So I'm really keen on using video in that sort of offline, safe rehearsal space, just as you would if you were in any other kind of creative sphere. Let's see how it's going, not just let's see how it went in the final performance.
I completely agree. I talk a lot about that, practice and performance.
Yeah.
Even to the kids now going off for a study leave, I use that practice as you have to perform.
Yeah.
Like for them preparing for exams and doing that. I want to wrap this up. I'm going to ask you same question I start to ask a lot of people.
Yeah.
What is the one question I should have asked you today that I haven't?
Oh, wow, I wish you'd told me that. What's the one question? Okay, what's the one question?
If you think about that, you gave me the response that everyone else does.
Okay.
If I haven't given it to them, it's like,
okay,
why didn't you tell me that? I
right.
would have thought about it.
Okay, how about what do you think about coaching?
Ooh. What do you think about coaching, Stuart?
I think it's great.
That's the answer. I think it's great.
I think it's coaching has real power. I think it's misunderstood and mangled in education. I think there's the real potential for the power and value of coaching to be lost in education because it's kind of getting lethally mutated in lots of different ways. The person who's inspired me most about coaching and really made me see what coaching truly is a guy called Ian Henderson, who works at Wellington College in the UK. He's the director of the Bridge Centre there. And Ian talks about coaching as a part of a continuum of helping. That's his phrase, not mine. I wish I'd come up with it. And the way that he talks about it is this, that pure coaching has in it no judgment. It has the belief in the other person that they have what it takes to achieve and to grow and to flourish. And that the role of the coach is really to help them, to discover that through questions and through coaching conversations. But that's just one place on this continuum of helping. And there are other things along there, like mentoring, like a more kind of directive instruction approch that we need at different times. And the way I think of it is, if I'm driving my car and you are the passenger and you see somebody step out into the road that I haven't seen, at that point, in terms of this continuum of helping, I don't need a pure coaching conversation where you say, what would you do if somebody stepped out into the road? Right? I need you to shout, stop now. Right? I need a very directive thing because something bad's going to happen. However, a different approach, right, without that kind of immediacy, a different kind of question, a different kind of conversation can happen. If you're a teacher and you are, if you're not adhering to some kind of safeguarding policy, right? Maybe a really directive thing is necessary at that point. But if it's something else along that continuum of helping, a more kind of coaching, pure coaching approach. So I fear that some of the real benefits of coaching could get lost. And I think we need to have a bigger conversation about what coaching really means, but have it in the context of this bigger continuum of helping, because we're all in different types of help at different times of the day and in different contexts in our teaching lives.
Yeah, I'm just picturing my wife in the passenger seat as I'm driving along, screaming at me.
Yeah, well, you need to get better at driving.
Yeah, so it's like, it's like, what did I miss? He's like, it was back there. It's like,
and coaching also needs to remember that the person who is being coached is more than just somebody who asks questions, gives feedback and instructions and things like that in a classroom. They're a human being. They're a human being who has stress and fear and hope and joy, all of these things, seeing them as the person, but believing in the power of that person to grow and to flourish. If we can create the conditions in which that becomes so much more accessible and feasible for that person, and that's where the real value of coaching, I think, lies.
I think, and that's a fantastic question I should have asked you. So thank you for that. Stuart, it's been an absolute pleasure listening to you and having the privilege to speak and just unpack some of that depth of knowledge that you have got.
Thank you for the invitation.
It's been a pleasure. Enjoy Dubai.
I am doing, and I will continue to.
Fantastic. You've come at the right time. It's got a little bit hotter. So, as I said to you, welcome for breathing.
I'm sticking with the suit. No matter what happens. So if you see a man melted into the pavement in a suit, that'll be me.
That'll be you. Well, enjoy it, and I hope Saturday enjoy the Research Conference.
Thank you.
The rest of the time, and all the best for the future endeavours for this year as well.
Thanks.